Hello everyone, welcome back to my channel. My name is Riley K. Jones. I'm a writer, teacher, and author tuber. And yes, I got a haircut. Today we are going to talk about action tags versus dialogue tags. Some of you might be familiar with this. Some of you might be wondering, okay, I've heard of dialogue tags, but what are action tags? So what are dialogue tags? Let's start with that. Dialogue tags are the I said, she said, they said that you add to the end of your dialogue. So for example, I'm reading from Percy Jackson and the Battle of the Labyrinth. Get over here, she said. Keep your head down. I felt pretty silly hiding behind a bunch of bongos but crouched beside her. Did they follow you? Rachel asked. You mean the cheerleaders? So you see where it says, she said, and then Rachel asks. Those are dialogue tags. So dialogue tags are important to know who's speaking and when. I have heard both ways of being like said is dead and being like you should never use said. And I've also heard it's totally fine. It's meant to just allow your mind to kind of just glance over to know who's saying things. So you don't need to worry about saying like she exasperated. There's two different camps. There's like she exasperated versus she said. And it's kind of like, personally, I'm in camp she said. When you have dialogue tags with really fluffy verbs, kind of like just showing off so you can use the thesaurus, like you don't really need to. I'm on more of that camp of you said is completely fine to use. I think that it does need to be used with a grain of salt. So for example, if we had a line of dialogue and you're always using said, then maybe you need to spice it up a little bit and you can throw in an asked or an exasperated or sighed. You want to kind of mix it up. But I'm getting ahead of myself here. How do you write dialogue tags? What should they look like when you're going through in the grammatical format? So when you are using dialogue tags, most often you're going to have a comma inside the end of your quotation mark. So for example, picking up from the Percy Jackson example, she nodded nervously, period. I don't think so, comma, I said, period. What are they? What did you see? So you can see, as I've illustrated on the screen for you, that there is a comma right before the end of the quotation marks and then I said. So that is grammatically correct if you're doing it at the end of the sentence. If you're putting that dialogue tag at the beginning of the sentence, like for example, maybe it is written I said, comma, quotation mark, I don't think so, period, quotation mark. So that is another way. So if it's at the beginning of the sentence, you put the comma after the dialogue tag. It's different if you're using, though, exclamation points and question marks. For example, at the very beginning of the scene, she says, "Get over here!" exclamation point. She said, period. So, and notice too
that the exclamation mark is inside of the quotation marks, not on the outside, and that the said also gets a period and it doesn't have a comma. If you are continuing your thought and it was two separate sentences, then you would have a comma after said.
Another thing to point out too is the two different types of capitalizations used with both dialogue tags. So you notice when it says get over here, exclamation point, the she is lowercase. The S in the she is lowercase because it's still, that's how it's just connected together at the end of the sentence. Now, if it's starting the sentence, you follow your general capitalization rules that it is supposed to be capitalized. So if it said, she said, comma, get over here, exclamation point, then the she should be capitalized. However, I don't think so, comma, I said. Now, I is capitalized because I is always capitalized, duh. But if it said maybe Percy said, Percy should be capitalized. Then you follow your normal capitalization rules there. But those are the two differences. Just keep that in mind. You should not have a capitalization there. Like let's say if it was turn to page 451, comma, the teacher the T and the should be lowercase as well if it's at the end of that sentence. Now, you might be wondering, okay, so I've got the understanding of dialogue tags. That one was pretty easy. What in the world is she talking about action tags? Now, action tags are called this is because the character is doing some sort of action and you're attributing, instead of saying a he said or she said, instead of having one of those, you're just attaching that action. So we're going to pick up with our Percy Jackson example, same scene. The mist. It's like this veil that hides the way things really are. Some mortals are born with the ability to see through it, like you. She studied me carefully. You did that at Hoover Dam. You called me immortal, like you're not. So we see that action tag of Rachel in this scene. She's studying Percy. And so we know it's still Rachel talking because we know it's addressing Rachel with the she, but it also is showing us there she's doing an action, and yet we're connecting the words, the dialogue to Rachel with the action. Now notice that the punctuation there and the setup is a lot different than a dialogue tag. The punctuation after she studied me carefully ends with a period. Anytime you have action tags, it will be just like a normal sentence. So if that came after the dialogue, you did that at Hoover Dam, you called me immortal, like you're not, she studied me carefully. Notice there that the S and she would be still capitalized, there's no commas, because it's kind of like two separate entities. So that's how both dialogue tags and action tags are separate in punctuation. So now you might be wondering, okay, I understand what action tags are, I understand what dialogue tags are, but when should I use them? Great question. There is no one right way to use them. However, a combination of the two works absolute wonders for your scene. So I have talked before about white room syndrome. So if you are wondering what that is, you can check out the video. I'll leave a link to it in the card right above. So if you have white room syndrome, then what you really need is to paint the world a little bit in that scene, in that setting. And this is when you get to play an actor, or a director. You're going to attribute certain tags to paint the scene out for your reader. Oftentimes, you will use a combinations of the dialogue tags and action tags. And here is an example from Percy Jackson, the full scene where we can see the dialogue tags versus action tags. I found Rachel in the band room. She was hiding behind a bass drum in the percussion center. Get over here, she said. Keep your head down. I felt pretty silly hiding behind a bunch of bongos, but I crouched beside her. Did they follow you? Rachel asked. You mean the cheerleaders? She nodded nervously. I don't think so, I said. Where are they? What did you see? Her green eyes were bright with fear. She had a sprinkle of freckles on her face that reminded me of constellations. Her maroon t-shirt read Harvard Art Department. You wouldn't believe me. Oh, yeah, I would, I promised. I know you can see through the mist. The what? The mist. It's like this veil that hides the way things really are. Some mortals are born with the ability to see through it, like you. She studied me carefully. You did that at the Hoover Dam. You called me immortal, like you're not. I felt like punching a bongo. What was I thinking? I could never explain. I shouldn't even try. Notice too that there were a lot of dialogue tags actually used in this one, but Royden really then kind of splashed in a few action tags to help break that up. And there's some times where he didn't even include an action tag or a dialogue tag. That is like an extra step where you don't even need to use them all the time. Especially since we have two characters combating back and forth, we kind of understand who's speaking at what times. It's always good to have a mixture of these. I have heard that you should only use action tags, and I actually kind of side with it when you're going through in revision. So when you're going through your revision, if you find that you're using I said, she said a lot, then maybe sprinkle in some action tags in there to really help ground the readers in the scene. Action tags are wonderful, when they're used to break up that common pattern of the I said, she said. It can be so impactful, and especially because actions do speak louder than words. So keep that in mind too when you're doing those action tags. What can you be saying about the character by the way they're moving, the way what they're doing, the way whatever they're doing? How is that speaking louder than what they're actually saying? So action tags can be super powerful to break up that scene and to add that extra layer of detail that you may be missing from your novel. And that is all I have for today's video, the difference between action tags and dialogue tags. If you have any further questions about action tags and dialogue tags, you can let me know down in the comments below. If you liked this video, make sure to let me know by giving this video a nice big thumbs up. It lets me know that you like videos like this one. And if you haven't already, click subscribe. I release all new videos on all things writing and reading every Thursday. Thank you guys again so much for watching. Keep writing, keep reading, and stay creative. Bye!